Welcome to Let's Talk Evolution. Really excited today to talk again about the topic of the moment, which is AI. So Let's Talk Evolution is a podcast where we engage thought leaders in the industry to talk about cutting edge innovation in tech and particularly relevant topics of the moment. I think this is the 6th or 7th podcast we've done in the last couple of months specifically on AI, but I'm really excited about this one because I think we're coming at this one from a slightly more entrepreneurial standpoint. And I'm delighted to be talking today to Maria Singson, who is the founder of SMEMojo, with I think long history in data, AI, and specifically capital markets analytics. Maria had some super exciting ideas around some of the topics that we often explore in these podcasts. And I think coming at it from an angle of an entrepreneur with a history of larger organizations gives that insight, which is perhaps slightly different to some of the podcasts we've done recently, where it's been people from big banks. And while those insights are super valuable and super interesting, it's normally a little bit more related to kind of large scale enterprise behavioral change and sort of systematic structural challenges. But I think the entrepreneurial journey is a super exciting one, and one that's probably enabled in a way that it never has been before by the power that AI gives entrepreneurs. So, Maria, thanks so much for joining us. Would you like to briefly introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, Jake. Hi, everybody. Very nice to meet you. And thank you so much for giving me this platform to talk about my newest company or venture, which is SMEMojo, as you mentioned. So I founded it just this year. It's a scoring platform, you can call it that. We do score startups and SMEs on their resilience and investability. We do have a certification program involving experts in residence that we deploy to the startup or the SME so that they can unearth about 200 factors on them. So some call us as a due diligence layer in any investment that an investor today, especially when it comes to AI, would try and make, so that they're not going blind, going in it blind in terms of putting their money to best use and so on, and making it the most profitable. I am a seasoned data scientist, statistician, even is what I was called in the beginning. I did work in larger companies, as you mentioned, the likes of Dun & Bradstreet. IBM is the most recent one, Genpact, and so on. And I catered to pretty much on a consulting level. It catered to banks, manufacturers, you name it, creditors, and especially the capital markets community. So this is not a newer venture for me. It's actually more of a homecoming, given my age. And so, it's just fun to be able to do this at the right time, given how AI has proliferated the entrepreneurship in everyone at the moment.
Yeah, 100%. I think we've prepped a couple of questions, which I think we got feedback on would be interesting to explore. But feel free to take it in any direction that you want. So I think first thing, and obviously related to SMEMojo, is like, how would you define resilience and investability for people and startups in the current AI era? And what are the kind of common gaps you see today?
Great question. Perfect for SMEMojo, actually. So at SMEMojo, we define resilience as an organization's capacity to absorb shocks. Now, you can take that in many different ways. There's adapting rapidly, there's emerging stronger from disruption. That's all part of resilience in our view, which means you're going to have technical agility, business model flexibility, and really human capital readiness, which I know is a near and dear topic to evolution. Investability takes it a bit further, so that you're not just looking at survival of a company. It also talks about the growth potential. So to sum it up, you wouldn't want to just be looking for whether somebody survives disruption, but actually do they get to capitalize on it? That's the key, right? Because that means they're creative, they're nimble, they're actually able to adjust their strategy and scale no matter what you throw at them. So we have a RIC score that measures about 200 of these data points that would contribute to the predictiveness of how resilient someone might be. We get all of these 200 factors in a matter of 6 weeks. What we do is we deploy seasoned executives, which we call the experts in residence. They've been there, they've done all sorts of things in their career, over their career. And so they know because they know what the founders might be missing, because the biggest gap really is that there's a couple of things, right? First one, organizations don't really have a sense yet as to how to best stress test their decision making process. So they might have AI tools now, because the whole frenzy about getting the right AI tools has come and gone, right? And even now, some of these companies are asking, well, where's my ROI? You might have brilliant people also in your leadership team, in the operational layer of your team, but the strategy isn't necessarily there. You haven't really pushed the envelope when it comes to the tools that you have, because it takes a lot of different things, right? So in order for an organization to really be able to leverage what they have, the gap is that glue, or that AI quote unquote transformation that they still need to be able to do. It's the strategy that they're missing in order to be able to be more tactical about it. The second gap is founder self-awareness. Let's look, we deal with a lot of startups. They are um I don't know if you've heard the term hyper mania or hypermanic, right?
Yeah.
So they kind of have a little bit of that. You do need that. I'm an entrepreneur myself. I love being an entrepreneur. I think I do have a bit of hyper mania myself. But the thing is, they don't know, or we don't know what we don't know. And so if we're still optimizing on what this investor or accelerator has told us and so on, we're already operating on something in the past, right? And so we always have to also be nimble. And what we tend to forget, I'm just generalizing, what we tend to forget is that nowadays the investors are also getting smarter and smarter. And
Yeah.
so what they're demanding really is proof of resilience. So this R word is out there. And so investors have a different name for it. Actually, they have two names for it. It's a combination of both resolution and conviction, right? So they have to feel resolute, and they have to feel the conviction when they're going long on someone or on a company. And so they need the data. They need hard data, given that we're now in a data-driven world, to be able to do that. And so that's the resilience factor that somebody like SMEMojo actually checks for. Um, and that's why we deploy the high gravitas executives, because like I said, they've known the multiple cycles that it takes for someone to succeed, not just in a founder startup mode, but maybe starting up at a different segment or a different ROI generating org within a large organization, like when a bank starts to spin off, a payments product and so on. Somebody needs to be able to team that, to create a team on that, and to create a strategy and so on and so forth. So these execs have been there; they have the experience. Then, thirdly, this is one that's um, actually we're doing for a couple of big banks right now, because this is where their heads are at. So it's coming, and it's getting more and more formalized. It's I think investors want to know more if someone is really high IQ or has some intelligence on the carbon footprint that they
Yeah.
have, right? So it's the carbon literacy and how it relates to AI sustainability. Because think about it, right? If you're a founder and you're saying, I've built this product, we're great, it's going to make $2 billion and so on. Often, what you forget in your pitch deck, your beautiful
Yeah.
pitch deck, is, well, how much carbon are you actually using to produce this 2 billion? Because
Yeah.
are you taking into account the regulatory changes and so on and so forth? So they really need to be able to show that they're smarter on that. When we talk to a lot of our startups that we score today, they forget about that. They actually don't have an answer.
Yeah.
One example, I'm not going to name names, but they're in a commodities industry that's very popular right now. And so they decided that they're going to create a platform that lets you invest in your real asset. And they forgot to take into account the carbon footprint and sort of the sustainability and ethics of the whole supply chain that they have, right?
Yeah.
So you can't just say today that, oh, well, yeah, I started a platform and we have AI underneath this platform. It's very smart and it's gonna make you smarter also in how you invest. No, you have to think about what you're investing in. If it involves mines, for example, you have to be aware as to what practices those mines that you're partnering with are doing. So it's that whole chain, and so the startups today, the founders today, do have to be smarter around that. Don't know. I spoke about a lot of things, so I don't know if I've
No,
answered
no,
it.
that's all super interesting. I think the great thing is I think it's really obvious now to me that one thing that people don't talk about enough is like the different challenges that small companies and big companies face. And I think that when we're discussing AI and AI adoption and AI integration into commercial and operational outcomes, it's really important to acknowledge, I think, that small company challenges are very different to big company challenges. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes people try and help small companies solve problems with big company mentality in over,
Mhm.
putting huge amount of, sort of bureaucratic structures in place into a 5-person company where actually you really do want a little bit more of a dynamic, agile, flexible environment in that type of company. And then, equally people try and, drive entrepreneurialism into large companies, and that can be, the best of intentions, but quite difficult to realize if people have been used to working in a much more process-driven way.
Yeah, I mean, I actually think, Jake, that these SMEs, the SMEs that we're dealing with, they kind of have an advantage because they're smaller. They're not used to, the highly regulated and bureaucratic environment, but they do have bureaucracy as well. It's just at a different scale. So they already are used to the nimbleness that you need to have today with AI. So what they're really lacking is, again, once you have the AI tools, how do you get them on this flywheel so that they keep on um, you know, gaining more and more advantage against their competitors. They keep on growing and thriving as alongside AI, because
Yeah,
who knows what sorts of inventions in AI we're going to have in just a year, right? When you
yeah,
actually look at the sort of the shelf life or the half life of anything AI right now, you'd be lucky to get 18 months in your run
yeah,
rate. So you need to be able to act fast. And I think the smaller you are with the right AI quote unquote transformation and mindset and culture inserted in there, you're actually poised a lot more well poised than probably the biggest companies.
yeah. Yeah, makes sense. And I guess related to that, if we look at how quickly AI accelerates the workplace, like both large and small companies, but I think, focusing maybe on the smaller, more nimble companies, what practical steps can individuals and organizations take to future-proof themselves?
Yeah. So this kind of answers there's a bit of an answer to the first one also as to what are the gaps, and then now here's how do you invest or future-proof your organization or yourselves, right? It boils down to, believe it or not, data. So I know that you've heard this recently, the largest infrastructure companies are saying, oh, wait a minute, we might not actually need all these things. Nobody needs to invest in the big infrastructure and stuff. I don't think that's what they're actually saying. You do need it. You need to know how to use it, right? In the context of AI. So how to future-proof yourselves? It boils back down to data and architecture, right?
Yeah.
Which is your infrastructure. So what do I mean by that? Well, you have to rethink, no matter how small you are. Again, it's to your advantage that you're smaller. But you have to rethink about your data infrastructure so that you're thinking on two things. How do you have learning velocity as an organization with that data infrastructure? And then how do you account for your environmental impact? Energy is a bigly coveted, I should say, theme right now, or sector,
Yeah.
right? Because it's what's going to power up all these databases and storage and things like that. But we're not thinking. No one is thinking. No one should be thinking about the traditional storage anymore. The real future proofing, again, is how do you bake learning into the very nucleus or central nervous system of your organization, which is your data and your infrastructure. How do you run your daily things, right? So every time you have, for example, if you have an AI assistant or the inferences in your ML models and so on, the data transformations that you execute on your databases and whatnot, those are all taking up compute power. And so there's a carbon cost to that, right? So energy right away becomes the elephant in the room. And so you have to be able to to future-proof yourself, solve for that energy like right now. The more efficient your AI operations are, the better your data infrastructures are, all those are going to fit together. It means that there's both better learning for your organization, for your people, and lower carbon footprint. So companies that architect their data centers as AI upskilling schools, you can think about it that way. They're capturing institutional knowledge, they're structuring learning loops, optimizing training data, feeding those back into the system. You're basically having NVIDIA just spoke about this yesterday, actually. You're having a generative AI baked into your data architecture and your databases. So it's this living thing. And so think about what that then gives the employees at an organization, if they even want to come to work still, right? It gives every employee the chance to be unique.
Yeah.
My generative AI powered database that I'm using now for my analytics may be completely different or being trained completely different than what Jake in the next cubicle. Sorry, that's the wrong analogy. We're not sitting in cubicles anymore. But in the next pod, in the next AI transformation pod, what Jake is using is completely different. Jake is teaching and training his database to learn differently than how I'm training mine, right? And so think of the challenge that the enterprise has. And so the bigger the enterprise, the harder this challenge becomes, because you have all these individualistic innovations and employees kind of operating. You have to still be the one, not only to provide a platform for them, but also be the one to put the strategy on top so that the execution will be flawless, both for your employees and for your AI. Okay, so the framework, when you think about it, the framework we use when evaluating organizations, whether you're a startup or an established organization, these apply, right? So for individuals, it's easy. Just stop thinking skills like you're gonna have, this career ladder, and so you're doing, oh, if I do this, I'll get promoted. If I do that, I'll get promoted to the next level. Things are going to be quite flattened because the entrepreneurial spirit and everyone will be kicking in, even in the office, quote unquote. So the learning velocity is more important. Um, can you go from zero to competent in a new AI tool in 72 hours? Because that's literally the time it should take us now if we really pay attention to all the innovative tools that we have today, right? So if your answer to that is no, consider that your red flag. It's like, oh, okay, I still have some work to do. I need to be faster in how I do things. It's the faster and faster sort of churning or flywheel that we're after. You got to be fluent in AI, not coding necessarily, but you know, understanding how prompting works, getting better at it, knowing when this is important, knowing when to delegate something to AI versus human judgment. This
Yeah.
is not being taught in schools right now. So we do have a generation, the younger generation, that's going to be somewhat blind and feeling themselves out in the dark on this still. Right.
Yeah.
And I think we do have a solution in SMEMojo or at SMEMojo as to how to kind of start influencing that given our experts in residence. And I'll talk about that a little later. But for organizations, the one key thing that we shouldn't forget in future proofing again is this AI effectiveness and carbon literacy. It always have to be mapped onto carbon efficiency, right? So resilience stress testing, um, we scenarios galore is what's
Yeah.
happening, and or the organization should be like, what if, doing all sorts of what if testing right now. The companies that are serving um, SMEs and founders and startups on how to simulate the future and then get the right steps alongside. Those are the ones that are benefiting most right now. But they're still, take it with a grain of salt, because as soon as, if these companies that are offering these services are taking too long to create their simulation tools, if they're not agile enough, chances are they're going to be out. It's like the car, the car sales floor, right? So the minute you buy the car and drive it off the parking lot, it's old.
Yeah.
So you have to also be showing resilience and nimbleness. Carbon pricing, that has to be baked into the scenarios, right? So what if the regulatory mandates change, and all of a sudden the price of the carbon unit that you figured out you're using goes up to 5x. What does that do to your company,
Yeah.
right? So all that's important, like the stress testing on that. And then I also think that we companies in general need to be able to have these AI transformation pods, just because of the rate of change in AI at the moment, right? And so if you don't devise something that'll keep you on this learning flywheel, you're going to be left behind. It's kind of like, John Boyd's OODA loop.
Yep.
So it's the same kind of concept. Once you're in that loop, you got to learn how to do, how to observe and orient and act and decide and act like really, really fast. And the faster you go, the more you're going to leave the competitor behind and get them confused.
Yeah.
Um, but everything is changing, and so it's really important. So at SMEMojo, we do offer these AI transformation pods in the 6 weeks that someone is quote unquote being certified or scored or evaluated, right? So it's kind of a win-win for everybody because we meet SMEs that would admit openly that, look, I'm pretty slow at innovating, I'm pretty slow at getting this AI thing going and so on. So help me, right? If you're telling me that you're going to score me for 6 weeks and I'm going to meet these 3 to 5 experts in residence of yours, um, great. I'll take their advice. I'll take their coaching. I know they're scoring me and evaluating me in the background with their own AI driven workbook, but can they also help me design my AI transformation pod? So it's a gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah.
The ones that sign up for this, because after that 6 weeks, after those 6 weeks, sorry, you're kind of left with something that you can use for a much longer period of time.
Yeah.
It's not, these pods are not your typical innovation pods. I know we kind of did that in the digital transformation, era, where we say, oh, create a sort of an analytics innovation pod or an AI innovation pod. It's not, because it's really, really tied to ROI and P&L,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that way, nobody's left at the altar waiting for the ROI to happen. There's accountability right from the get-go.
Yeah.
And so, if you can reimagine your data infrastructure as an AI training ground, like I mentioned earlier, you're also future-proofing your organization or your business, right? So um, it's no longer the industrial era where you're just having your database as your storage and so on and so forth. It's not just about cybersecurity, although with the recent Cloudflare faux pas, um, it's obviously still top of mind. The continuous learning environment is actually key, right? So it's sort of an upskilling school for the AI assistants, the generative AI that you're using.
Yeah.
So the strategizing around that is very important. Think on this. Every customer interaction, solve problems, right? There's a newer sort of group called customer success team in
Yeah.
a lot of the software companies, right? This is sort of where their sweet spot is, because if you think of a customer success manager, they're also quote unquote deployed at the client. Their job isn't really to just deploy something. It's they're looking out for all these things and looking for the edge cases that can get fed back into the AI loop, so that the generative AI driven architecture that hopefully they also implemented keeps on learning and keeps on innovating and improving off of those edge cases and so on. And of course, there's the normal cases that anyone can spot and rattle off by the time the customer is using the software a little for a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So targeted fine tuning, caching intelligent responses, curating high signal training data. The key is to be able for the organization to be able to say, hey, my AI is actually getting smarter exponentially, and my carbon footprint per unit of intelligence actually decreases.
Yeah.
Those two have to be married up along the way.
I think we talked a lot there about kind of infrastructure and best practice in organizations and how we, optimize AI for, the best use cases. I think obviously, we're a talent focused company, and, I think, probably the most divisive component of the AI discourse at the moment is the impact on people. And I think some people are thinking, oh no, it's just a tool like Excel, and people are going to use it to do stuff. And then, people like Mo Gaudat and some of the more polarizing thinkers are saying that this is Armageddon, and in the next 10 years it's going to be highly disruptive. And I think, when we talked the other day, I think you're potentially a little bit more optimistic about the job opportunities, particularly for younger people, than I was. I think we're potentially both slightly more optimistic than Mo Gaudat. But I think bringing it to people, and I guess not just to discuss one extreme or the other, but from the opportunity of entrepreneurs and talent generally, in the next 1 to 3 years, which is normally people's sort of scope of concern, where do you see the biggest opportunities for people to, become relevant or, remain relevant and become more deeply, able to integrate AI into a business?
I hope this recording, well, you be the judge, but I hope I don't say something that is too controversial. I am
No,
quite
do say stuff that's controversial.
I'm quite optimistic, Jake, because not just for the younger generation, the newer generation that's incoming in the workforce, but also the ones who are retiring, the ones who are in their 40s, 50s, 60s, even 70s, right? I mean, it's if you're to embrace AI, or the sooner you embrace AI, the sooner you realize as to how valuable you actually will become as we get deeper into AI. But you have to be the master of it. You have to be the commander of it, right? So on the younger spectrum, you've got the future of work, which is happening now. And remember, for the organization, no matter how big or small, this sort of transformation that we're going through with the future of work, which is already here, isn't just operational, it's actually existential. So just like in our self-reflections when we're whatever, New Year's Eve, and we're saying, okay, what's my resolution for the next year? The company also has to ask, who am I? Who do I want to become? How long do I have to act on it? Why do I want to become that? And how? Right? So the how long and the how come much later. It's the who you want to be and why. That are the two key most important things. And so as these younger employees are coming in, every enterprise has to keep in mind that the business model is sort of turned upside down now, right? Don't be too company centric or organization centric. You have to be employee centric. That's the new trend, because every new employee that comes through the door, you have to assume that they're a lot more entrepreneurial than the typical entrepreneur that you're used to meeting, or the typical entrepreneurial partner that you're used to dealing with. So everything changes. It's not an HR initiative even. It's really, who do we want to be? It has to come from the top. The vision has to come from there as to how are you going to cater to an employee? Because that employee can do pretty much 80% of what you used to do, or are currently doing even,
Yeah.
right? On something very little. And so if they can do 80% at what you can offer them, why would they stay with you? So it's this is an urgent call, actually, to the board, to the senior leadership at a company. It's like, you have to talk about this now. This is your New Year's Eve, and you got to really sit down and create your New Year's resolution as to who you want to be, because otherwise you don't know how much AI is going to be faster in transforming everyone. And so the last thing you'd want is kind of what we saw with ChatGPT, right? So we were in lockdown, or kind of easing off of it, and then ChatGPT was born in 2022 November. Everyone went to it, and I'm curious, what is it, and blah blah blah. And before you know it, there was disparity in the graphs, right? So the individuals were learning a lot more faster than the enterprise.
Yeah.
Check into it now, enterprise is still only catching up, right?
Yeah.
Education system, forget it. There are some schools still that, where teachers are reprimanding students for using ChatGPT, right?
Yeah.
As a parent, you don't want that because that's going to be the future. So no, I
Yeah.
want my kid
Yeah.
to be, using ChatGPT and so on. So the younger generation that's coming in, I think they're actually going to benefit from this because the enterprise is going to figure out, oh, okay, I can give all these lower sort of boring work or tasks to AI. And so think about your newly graduate uh, sort of employee coming in.
Yeah.
You're training them, you're giving them your whole spiel about the company and so on. They're getting trained on that, on your software, on your tools, on the ethics of the company and the core values. But at the end of the day, how are they going to be satisfied? You're going to throw them into projects and initiatives that are a lot more meaningful than what you and I probably got when we were newbies, right?
Yeah.
Because and that requires a lot more from them. When you give someone something that's challenging, they rise up to the challenge. So you're gonna get, more creative, more resourceful, and in many ways more thoughtful younger generation coming into the workforce. I'm going to address the latter end, right? I actually do see this as one of the opportunities for founders who might be wanting to think about catering to this AI boom, right? They could set up sort of an AI literacy, AI transformation school for the elder generation. Not saying that the elder generation would, all want to still continue to work, but it always helps to make more money because we're going to live longer. At least that's the prediction. If we actually leverage all these AI and AI now takes care of productivity, now we've got healthier lives supposedly, and we exercise more, we're with family more, we laugh more, we tend to the more human side of things more, we live longer, right? We're
Yeah.
healthier and so on. So, and there's a bunch of science now out there that the more active you keep your mind, the healthier you'll be, the longer you live. So what do these, folks who are in their mid 40s onwards to 70s who do have the smarts and the curiosity in them, what do they do, right? I mean, they would take up some kind of advisory roles and stuff. But wouldn't it be nice to also kind of arm them, because they're receptive to it anyway, arm them with the right schooling, the right awareness for all these AI tools that are coming up? Because then what are you creating? You're creating this segment of the population that, you know, traditionally Silicon Valley is kind of like, okay, yeah, I've made you rich now, go and retire and so on, right? No,
Yeah.
they actually can contribute a lot more to their productivity, and they have something very unique that no one else has. You know what that is? It's they know what it was then and what's the future. So they straddle both worlds, and they're also going to know how to translate back and forth all sorts of things between those two worlds.
Yeah.
That's
100%.
that's freaking awesome, right? Because who else would know that? So the younger generation needs to pay attention to the older one because and be able to leverage them. Enterprises need to be able to leverage that group because they're the bridge. They're the
Yeah.
natural sort of bridge. And they're not going to be there forever, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, I completely agree with you about the skill or the competence that is perhaps most valuable in organizations, large and small, moving forward, is that kind of intrapreneur. That person who's given the space to think of innovative ideas, use cases, or business models, which
mhm,
AI can enable, build, and test. in, you know, immense speed in comparison to how possible that's been in the past. I think where my perhaps slightly more pessimistic outlook on employment opportunities for those like plus of 50 or graduating now would be, I think there's a direct correlation between the age at which a founder starts their business and the success of that business. I think that the founder-led businesses, when the founder is plus of 40, have a higher likelihood of success than founder-led businesses when the founder's in their 20, for example.
Yeah.
So I think and this is thinking back to me in when I graduated, like I'm not sure I had the understanding of the world to enable a entrepreneurial mindset to the extent that experience in it could enable. So, for example, there's book knowledge and then there's tacit knowledge. And tacit knowledge is actually doing a job, operating in an ecosystem and understanding how the world works. So, if somebody had said to me when I was 21, it was like, how do you get funding from venture capital or private equity? I would go, don't know what either of those things are. Funding, I sort of don't get either. So if you're thinking about how to develop an entrepreneur at a very early stage and understanding the value that type of mindset or that type of person or that type of role with freedom can ultimately give an organization, I would suggest that maybe it is the demographic that the majority of people are still hiring, which is the commercially minded 30 to 40-year-old, which would be difficult to compete with. Maybe 40s understated, maybe 30 to 50-year-old, who has a commercial mindset, a network of people who can, give feedback or certainly give additional ideas on how an idea could monetize or commercialize. That could perhaps outcompete certainly the younger generation. I completely get your point on the older generation having that knowledge of what things used to be and what they are now. And I completely agree with the value of people who have that interest and mindset. I would suggest that we talk about Silicon Valley and the talent available there, both in the younger and older demographics. I still feel that perhaps we're talking about the minority as opposed to the majority. And the minority will always be hireable. The top 10% will always be hireable. So I think those are the two areas where perhaps I'd love to just hear your view. One being that is it possible to be an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur without the sort of commercial awareness of some experience? And then are we talking about a minority of entrepreneurially minded people who'd probably be okay anyway? Or are we talking about a reality where, don't know, everyone has this capability within them if they dig deep enough?
Yeah, I think, I know I said before that this is not an HR initiative. At some point, it becomes an HR initiative. HR needs to own this. HR needs to start to transform before the organization can transform, right? And so what do I mean by that? They have to rethink what the roles are. They have to rethink what the motivations are or motivators are, right? It's no longer salary because, you think about it, who's not investing in Bitcoin and all these things, right? I know pretty much, a lot of the younger generation, younger at least than my generation, who are very well versed in that. I learned how to, trade cryptos from a data scientist that I hired in Mexico City when I was running my analytics consulting firm back in 2016, right? And so they're very mindful about these things. They're very resourceful already. But going back to this HR, they got to redraw their talent map. It's not just talent map. There's the motivation map and everything. And all those have to make sense. They got to show that to the leadership team as to what that new knowledge graph looks like. And then that leadership team alongside with them have to really work together sort of thoughtfully as to, again, who do they want to become? How do they retain these employees that have new motivators in mind, right? If you're used to, um, doing the menial tasks and they're repetitive, and now we've given that to AI automation, for example, what do you do next? Perfect example, trust and safety. Everyone's got a website. Everyone's got, some footprint in social media, all the companies, right? They're gathering feedback and so on. It used to be that trust and safety was a very taxing but menial work. Nobody wanted it because it's so, it's just psychologically quite expensive for someone who's getting paid very little, right? And so they walk away and so on. So think about AI now filtering a lot of that. Facebook's doing this already, I'm sure, Twitter and so on. um, and so now what do those people do? Well, they get again to now create the compliance and the ethics sort of governance as to how AI should be used and so on. So they're being invited. It's an invitation, not extinction, um, as to how they can think about their work next. And then if you become an ethics compliance expert at an organization, yes, there's AI that's going to flow into it, like what we talked about earlier. Hopefully, you're going to be able to leverage that, that data coming in so that you can infuse those into your AI-based compliance system. But the new sort of motivators would be, are you being recognized? Are you being seen as the as an author of the AI compliance and ethics for company X, right? That's a big deal these days. And it's a win-win situation because if company X is able to groom you or transform you so that you used to be the only the case sort of identifier and so on, and then now you're case tagger, and now you're already doing things, you're presenting, maybe not presenting to conferences because I know some people don't like presenting, but you're getting known
Yeah.
outside of the organization, right? That becomes part of your equity. It's part of you. Nobody will take that. It's your brand, right? And then your company will keep supporting you because you're still tied to their brand. And so they're going to attract better talent through you because they've given you the platform to now be better and actually transform yourself in the AI quote unquote world, right? So everybody wins. And I'm I'm quite optimistic on that, probably more optimistic than some, but I'm willing to bet on it.
I love your optimism. And thank you for all those insights into those kind of three primary questions, and then a couple of interesting segues that we explored. I guess, just to finish off, I guess I really hope that your sort of optimistic outlook on the opportunities that exist, particularly for the younger generation, having a 2-year-old myself. But I think it'll be, regardless, I completely agree that the opportunities now for entrepreneurs to innovate at speed exist. Is there anything else you'd just like to finish off with to conclude the conversation?
Just again to sum up, there's a few themes that we talked about. So carbon awareness is a big deal.
Yeah.
Data centers as learning institutions is a big deal. Longevity through AI mastery is also a big deal. That's how you're gonna sort of ride the wave, this AI wave that we have. So ultimately the lesson is that AI isn't just a tool, it's actually a transformation of how organizations learn, operate, and then endure, right? So that boils back to SMEMojo's offerings around gauging startups and SMEs on their resilience for investors who are looking for hard data on their resilience and investability. So I'll leave it at that.